When I was serving, we had a red card for reservists, a green card for active duty, and a gray card for reservists. Is your card now replacing all three of those?
Yeah.
Or they still have different cards?
What we, it was a great mark of sort of second-class status that reservists had a pink card.
Oh, red, yeah.
Right, and you know, because reservists are really kind of pinkos. And so under the one team, one fight strategy, all of our cards are the same. So my card, for example, says Commander Mark Stephen Kirk, Navy, and that's it. And obviously all the detail is embedded in the chip in the card, but when you present the card, it's seamless.
Mark, going back to the satellite this morning, what kind of reaction of shooting down that satellite, how do you think it impacts our relationship with the Russians, the Chinese, these other people that have nuclear or satellite capabilities?
Will have a, they're going to complain about it a lot.
Sure.
I deal a lot with the Chinese, and we were very disappointed when the Chinese conducted an anti-satellite test and blew up one of their own satellites earlier last year. But there is a big difference between what we did and what the Chinese did. What we did was we told the entire world about the problem. What we did was, in front of everybody, wrestled with whether we let this hydrazine tank hit the Earth and create this huge environmental problem, or to take it out. We waited also for the satellite to be in very low Earth orbit. It was only 160 miles above the Earth, so that all of the debris immediately came back to Earth. What the Chinese did was they operated in total secrecy. They conducted a fully military anti-satellite test. And they blew up this satellite in high Earth orbit. And so 12 million pieces of debris were created by what the Chinese did. So much debris that then NASA came to the United States Congress and said, we need additional appropriations to move the space station because we're worried about one of these nuts or bolts hitting the space station, you know, puncturing the outer skin of the station. I think it was clear that while there's controversy, in the end what the United States did was responsible and removed a hazard, and what the Chinese did was irresponsible and created one. So.
There's a case about to go to the Supreme Court having to do with gun laws in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And the pro-gun faction submitted a brief in support of that position. And I seen a list the other day that had 8 Illinois representatives who signed off on that brief, and you weren't on it. I don't know if the list was complete or not. Just wanted to talk about it.
You know, obviously the District of Columbia has I think it's a total ban on handguns in the district. You know, while I am for sensible ways to reduce gun violence, I will say that the record of gun violence in D.C. is worse than almost anywhere else. You know, it underscores the point that you can make as many laws as you want, but the big drug gangs and other people in D.C. don't pay attention to any of it. I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about one other thing in D.C. You know, the D.C. school system spends as much as we do per pupil in some of our best school districts. And yet the mayor of the District of Columbia, who is a very ardent left-wing Democrat, and the head of the school board of the District of Columbia, who is a very ardent left-wing Democrat as well, have both come out wanting somehow to give parents the option to get out of the D.C. school system. This is a standard debate that we all know about, but it gained some poignancy when I saw a statistic. I think it was 5% of all young women in D.C. schools have been raped in school. Think about locking your child in a place where they can't ensure her physical safety. There are a lot of things wrong with the District of Columbia. That's one. Safety in the schools are another. It's really a poster child for many of the worst problems in the country.
So, how do I interpret that about your position on this gun issue?
You know, I am for practicality. I am for actually taking action which reduces violence. Probably the biggest thing that I've done recently is I reached out to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to station new agents in Waukegan, because we have 3,000 documented drug gang members operating north of Lake Cook Road. Gangs that have the title Satan's Disciples, Larry's Original Crew, Mexican Maniacs, Latin Kings, Gangster Disciples, and the increased ATF presence has nailed a lot of people and taken a lot of crime guns off the streets. I'm particularly concerned, especially like in North Chicago, Waukegan. The average gang shooter, like on Broadway in North Chicago, is in the 7th grade. And so it's really saving an entire life when we pull that gun off the street, and we save that kid through Youth Build or another program. On the difference between federal and state prosecution, though, the legal distinction is profound. When you're charged, when you're a gangbanger and you're charged under the state of Illinois, you generally go to prison for anywhere between 5 to 8 years. When you are charged federally, it's a 20-year mandatory minimum with no parole. You're gone. It's the most awesome power to have over a defendant, because you pull a leader or deputy leader of Larry's Original Crew in. Now that you got ATF, you got a federal indictment, and you look that kid in the eye and say, you're 25, we'll see you when you're 45. Now, you could turn state's evidence and give the rest of your gang up, and we'll go lightly. Otherwise, if you adhere to the gang code, there's no parole. Goodbye. And that's a very powerful thing. And I think that's effective ways to actually save people. What were we talking about? Yeah.
This whole subprime mess and the talk of the government will bail out people and saving their homes, and I can understand the need to, from an economic interest in keeping the industry, the country going. But what's the government going to do, or can you speak to the thought process of saying, how do you avoid this from happening again, and we sort of curtail these stupid decisions and opportunities of the individuals, as well as the greed of the people that were in line to stand up and take a check, knowing that now we send a message, hey, if I screw up again, someone may be there to bail me out. How does that, not right now, fixing it now, but future, what can the government do to help avoid a similar situation?
I think